What's up everyone? So I've been seeing this trend a lot recently, and especially for the people I train in person. So let's talk about it. I'm gonna be honest with you. I kind of have a bias towards the conventional deadlift. But recently I've seen a lot of people who've pulled conventional for years go and try sumo and just love it. And it got me thinking, why doesn't everyone who pulls one way go give the opposite variation a chance? So if you normally pull conventional, go try out sumo. Worst case scenario, you had fun trying a new lift. But before we talk about why, let's talk about some of the similarities and differences between the sumo and conventional deadlift. To start, both exercises require the lifter to pick a heavy object off of the ground, which is always fun. Along with that, they both should start with the bar directly over the middle of the lifter's foot, the lifter's shoulder blades or armpit directly over the bar, and the lifter's back set in a locked position. During the pull, both deadlifts overall use very similar sections of muscle mass, but each of them have a little different emphasis into one or two groups of muscle, but we'll dive deeper into that in a second. For both, the bar should travel in a relatively straight line, which for most people is checked by keeping the bar on your leg throughout the whole movement. And both the sumo and conventional deadlift are finished by standing up tall with both your knees and hips completely locked out and your shoulders behind the bar. And now for some differences. The obvious one are people who pull sumo are cheating. I'm joking. The foot position of each lift. The sumo deadlift puts the lifter in a position with their stance wider and their hands inside of their feet, which both of these factors give a lot of mechanical advantages to the lifter. When you're trying to lift a heavy object, the distance you have to move it will affect how heavy you can go. For example, if you had to pick something up as heavy as you possibly could and carry it without dropping it for a mile, and then do it again another day but you only have to carry it 10 feet this time, it's pretty clear you're gonna be able to carry a heavier weight for the 10-foot walk versus the mile walk. Now we can use those same concepts but shorten the distance you have to pull the bar during the deadlift. The sumo deadlift does that by spreading your legs wider, mechanically making you shorter. Also, moving your hands medial or towards the center of your body theoretically makes them longer, helping you to not have to pull the bar as far up to lock it out. The more vertical or perpendicular to the ground your forearms are, the longer they are because your hands are closer to the ground. Compare this to where your hands are at when you snatch. Your forearms are almost horizontal or parallel to the ground, which when you stand up makes your arms shorter or further away from the ground. Other than those, when we look at some of the data from research when it comes to muscle activation of each lift, it's a little gray. There seems to be two major ways to analyze a certain plane of motion, in two-dimensional or three-dimensional. And when you compare the two, there are some differences with the data on the exact same test. So, Escamilla et al. Came to the conclusion that the sumo deadlift seems to be more effective than the conventional deadlift at recruiting the quads, which is probably due to the greater knee extensor moments during this style of deadlift. During a different study from Escamilla et al., they made a similar argument and came to the conclusion that due to the more horizontal back angle of the conventional deadlift, the moments and forces create a higher demand on the low back or lumbar spine and the muscle mass around that area. And like I said, some of this is back and forth, but those two things seem to be trends. And I'm not saying the conventional deadlift doesn't activate your quads or the sumo deadlift doesn't use your low back. They both are still deadlifts and use very similar muscles to create the force to move the bar. But as we mess around with different joint angles and other factors, the different variations can shift the emphasis on which muscles are handling more of the load. So why do I think you should give the other variation that you don't do often a try? Well, there are a couple different reasons, but let's start off with why not? Well, a lot of people get very stuck in their ways of, I do this variation and the other one sucks. And I find myself doing that too. But what if you tried the other one and something just clicked and felt great? Or what if you're a taller guy and you've been doing conventional for years and every time you do it, you just feel all smushed. And then you try sumo and it just feels like amazing. That scenario is the exact reason that inspired this video. We've had a couple of taller guys who just tried sumo for the first time and just love it. Another example would be, what if it turns out to be a great assistance lift for your regular competition deadlift? I'm not saying do this right before a big meet, but while training during the off season, why not give it a shot? I also think there's something to expanding your base of movements and movement patterns that you're strengthening. I'm not saying go crazy and do a bunch of random exercises, but I think trying variations can be very beneficial to things other than increasing your 1 rep max. Overall, both the conventional and sumo are deadlifts. Yes, they have differences, but they have a lot of similarities too. If you're watching this and you've only tried one of them, either conventional or sumo, I challenge you to go give the other one a shot.